Well, hello and welcome to Going Deeper, where we dive and delve a bit deeper into some of the topics that we've been looking at recently on our Sunday morning services. My name's Martin, and I'm going to be kind of keeping things in order this evening. I'm going to welcome our two co-hosts this morning, our two guests, I guess, this evening. In a moment, that's David and Ian. But just before we do that, we'd love to connect with you. You're very welcome to make a comment if you're watching this live, and we'll do our best to respond to that comment. Or if you're watching later, then you can still make a comment, and hopefully we might be able to respond to it, although that will probably be by text. And you can connect with us also through Facebook and Instagram. Just search Hawley Baptist Church, and you'll hopefully find us on either of those two platforms. So I'm going to welcome in David and Ian. Hello, David and Ian.
Hiya.
Hello, it's great to have you with us. Are you both well?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Good, good. We're going to be looking at this evening a topic which we've been looking at since the beginning of June, which is unusual for us because usually our sermon series lasts only 1 month, but this has lasted us 2 months. And that's Fruitfulness on the Front Line. And the reason you two have been chosen is not only because you're amazing and wise and insightful, but actually you both also preached one of the parts of the series. Ian, which part did you preach on?
I preached on a mouthpiece for truth and justice.
A mouthpiece for truth and justice, which was last Sunday. And David, which one did you preach on?
Mine was making good work.
Making good work. And these were 6 M's that, as part of the series, we looked at 6 things that we should be doing if we're followers of Jesus on our front line. We'll come to what a front line is in a moment. But they were 1, modeling godly character; 2, making good work; 3, ministering grace and love; 4, molding culture; 5, a mouthpiece for truth and justice; and then the one we did this morning was a messenger of the gospel. Ian, what's your understanding of what a front line is? We talk about fruitfulness on our front lines. What is a front line?
I think that my front line is people that I meet on an everyday basis. So when I walk out my front door on the whole, it's the people that I meet in the street or wherever I'm going. It's anyone that I might come into contact with.
Yeah. And David, for you, how would you describe your front line?
I've often just looked at it as work.
Yeah.
I'm sure other places must be front lines, but I've just very often just looked at work.
Well. So there's a slight difference there, isn't it? So David, you are still at work. Ian, not employed, paid employment anymore. So obviously that it gives a slight difference between the two of you. And David, you've got a job that involves long hours, a lot of responsibility. So I'm guessing that would be your predominant front line. Ian, have you got a predominant front line? Because you haven't got that paid work, which would normally take up.
No, there's not that structure really. So no, not in the same way. I think that if you want to have a primary front line, then I think I would say I live in a road that's got just 10 houses in it. It's a close. And so I would say that has been pretty much my front line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
My primary front line, if you like.
Primary front line. So I'll talk to you maybe a little bit more about your front lines and what's happening in your front lines in a moment. But this series, Fruitfulness on the Front Line, comes from the London Institute of Contemporary Christianity, or LICC for short. And really, they looked at the fact that there are, I worked this out before we came online, 168 hours in a week. If we have a good night's sleep of 8 hours per week, that's 56 hours. That leaves us with 102 hours a week that we have awake. I wonder how many hours, Ian, how many hours a week do you think you spend in church and doing church things?
Doing church stuff.
Yeah.
I would think that I'm probably out 3, 6. I'm probably looking at around 8 hours a week on church.
8 hours, which is probably more than average for.
I think it is, yeah. But I've got
David. I'm guessing yours is a little bit less than that.
I was just thinking 2.5 to 3.
Okay. So that leaves just shy of 100 hours still left once you take away all those church things where we're still called to be church, and that's what we call our front line. Where do we spend those almost 100 hours a week? And if we were just concerned with living out our Christian faith and being church for the few hours that we happen to be doing a church activity, like small group or Sunday mornings or Sunday evening services, if you have them, we would not be living a very fruitful life in terms of our Christian faith. And I guess that's why LICC has done so much work on this. There's so many books and courses that if you look on their website, you can access, and hopefully we might do another one maybe next year. I mean, Ian, how do you feel about that idea, those figures, those numbers, and how it might affect what we do as a church?
I think that what I would see is that as I'm out and about during the day, so going out shopping or going about normal chores, it's everyone I bump into. There's an opportunity to strike up a conversation, to share something, perhaps not verbally, but by my attitude, the love of Jesus. So it's about, I think, really taking opportunities and being fairly intentional about looking out for people and seeing, where are there people that I might be able to talk to.
Yeah. How about you, David? How does that whole frontline thing, does it make you view your faith differently, make you view maybe church differently if we spend so much time not in church?
It certainly made me think differently about work. And although I might not be able to, I don't know, hold out a tract to people coming into work and say, repent or go back home, I just realize that is where I spend the majority of my time in the week. And I would need to think differently about how I reflect Christ. Because if I thought it was just wait till Sunday to do that, that's a lot of time without the light on.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching, guys, maybe you could put in the comment what your front lines are. Helen said that my main front line is my home, as my foster daughter does not yet know Jesus. So Helen invites people to come and live with her. So she sees that very much as her front line. Meg says my front line is living with my other half, being an auntie. So family, and once again, home as well. So if anyone watching, maybe they want to say what their front line is as well. David and Ian, do you think we have a challenge therefore as a church? Often we encourage people to serve and train them to serve within a church context. So leading worship, preaching, serving on the rota, trying to make what can be often quite a beast of a church run smoothly. If we're spending majority of our time being church somewhere else, how do you think that should affect what we do as a church to equip people on those front lines?
Yeah. Good question, which means there's no really any ready answer. But I think that we need to have an environment where people can come back and the opportunity to talk about how they felt their front line's gone during the week, to discuss what challenges perhaps they're facing as they go in to the new week, perhaps situations where they might want to share, well, how can I be Jesus in this situation? How can people see Jesus in me? So I think it's providing the opportunity in the environment for people to open up and share and discuss those things, which quite often are quite personal, aren't they? And I think that perhaps a lot of people, we find it hard to open up in that way.
Yeah. David, what do you think?
I was just pleased I answered after Ian, but it's, I, I kind of think if you were calling your troops together to get them to go out, it would seem odd that you gave them provisions for one day when you sent them out for a week. So if we see the church as a place where people come to call it refuel, I would almost see it as you got to the filling station, then you walk in and you have a chat with other people, like Ian was saying, to just wonder, yes, I've got the food, but there might be stuff that I listen to from you that helps me know what route to drive through and what not to go through. So something that prepares us for the week ahead. If what you did was, I don't know, told me how to better arrange the chairs in church, that would be great for the morning, but I'm not sure you've really prepared me for the rest. Yeah, I think that's what I'd think. It needs to set me up for the whole 7 days.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got two things there. We've got a Sunday morning being a place where you're equipping people for the rest of their week. So it's really important, therefore, it's a place where people feel energized, where they can feel they can connect with God in a meaningful way, but particularly it needs to be practical teaching that they can apply pretty much as soon as they leave the building within the context that they find themselves in. And then from what you said, Ian, they also need a space where they can come and talk and offload and discuss and get support and prayer. And I'm guessing the most natural place that would happen would be a home group or a small group.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if we could, if someone just attends church on a Sunday and small group midweek, then that should help enormously with their Christian walk. Do you think?
I think so. I think it does. I think, but you can't rule out the responsibility of individuals to maintain their relationship with Jesus. So there's a personal dynamic to it as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. David, do you have any? Do you want to talk a little bit about your frontline? You said it predominantly work. Do you have any examples or any stories to share from your frontline?
I can't think of any specific ones, but that's because there are very many. I don't know. You know, I think I wrote in yours the other day about deciding to go down the stairs instead of taking the lifts and then bumping into someone. And I called it a God incident rather than a coincidence. But there are often times when it's not been so much I've been able to preach to someone, but there's something I've done for someone which, if they then found out I was a Christian, would have been a great witness for them. And there are often quite a few of those. Every now and then, sometimes somebody comes back and goes, "You remember when you told me this?" And I can't remember that at all. My sister wrote to me about something I'd said, and I said, "Whoa, this is interesting because it's amazing how your memory is so good and mine is just awful. I can't remember saying that." And I said, it makes me realize that if there was any wisdom there, I was definitely the channel, not the source. And she then said, yes, but the channel often gets wet by what it's allowing to pass through. And I think that's us in our day-to-day lives. We will make an impact on people, whether we remember it or not. And yeah, being able to realize it's not just your church face you put on a Sunday, if there's such a thing, but realizing, like Ian said, everyone you bump into. So work, no particular instance, but very many where you look back and you go, wow.
Yeah. And that's so important, isn't it? Our daily, hourly attitudes, like in how we interact with others, the conversation, the way we speak to people is such a strong witness. And sometimes we can undermine the things that we say through the way that we act or the way that we say them. And that can be a counter to all the good things we can do. We can ruin just by being mean and grumpy majority of the time and actually drive people away. So yeah, David, that's such an important thing, is that how we are all the time is a much stronger witness than how we are at specific moments. that we might be able to recall. Or I remember I literally preached the gospel the other week, and that may be less important than the hours you spent with your grandchildren or a work colleague who was struggling, and the time that you gave to them. Yeah, Ian, how about you? What about your front line, which you said is possibly your neighbours, the house? And I know you have invited neighbours along to church events, but is there anything else?
We do that, and I mean, we're on fairly friendly terms with everyone, I'd like to think. So I think it's just maintaining that neighbourliness and helping each other out where you can, really.
Yeah.
I think is the main opportunity. Interestingly enough, there was an opportunity today. This is not neighbours, but this is further afield, because after the church, I take the Iranian guys back to the hotel in Russ Hill, which, for anyone who knows where Russ Hill is, it is fairly remote. As I drove through Charwood and then out towards Russ Hill, there was a guy walking towards Charwood. I didn't think much of it, dropped the guys off, had a full came back. And of course, coming back, the car was empty. And I saw this guy about half a mile away, and then it starts in my mind. Shall I offer him a lift or shan't I? What would be the right thing to do? Well, in fact, I did stop and I did offer him a lift, but he said no thanks.
Because you look dodgy.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Backed out car, and I just think that, in a sense, our Frontline is what it's about. It's taking those times when perhaps the Holy Spirit nudges you and says, "Well, just step out. You don't know quite what might happen or how they might react, but you take an initiative."
Yeah. See, David, you made a point where you said if they'd known that I was a Christian, this would have been a good witness. Is that important, that they actually know that we're a Christian? Because there's lots of people we literally see fleetingly. Obviously, there are people that will know us, but there are other people that they'll never know. Someone at the checkout, or we let pass when we're in the car. Does it matter? So I have a fish on my car, so people know I'm a Christian. My wife refuses to have a fish on her car. So yeah, what do you reckon?
That if you were a lawyer, you might have a shark on your car, but who knows? But I think one of my fears is that I will let God down, and that bit in the Bible where it says, "Because of you, the name of God is blasphemed." I'm so keen for that not to happen. So it's not like I go around hiding the fact I'm a Christian, but I am very keen that if people find out, they look back and go, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. I think that matters a lot to me. Do I, that one where it says if you were in court and they were about to convict you as a Christian, would there be enough evidence against you? I do sometimes look at myself and wonder, certainly at work, whether that will be the case. But every now and then you bump into someone who says, oh, you're a Christian, you must know. And I go, how do you know? How did you? And word gets round.
Yeah,
there's no question. So whether you like it or not, you are representing God. But I do think, I'd like to think, somehow, sometimes we look at God as being very abstract, and let's make it something real. I'd like to think that my daughter would feel it mattered, that when somebody talked about what she did, I wouldn't be ashamed. So I'd like to think the same for God, that the way I live my life would make somebody want, first of all, to give him the glory, but also want to know him.
Yeah.
I'd like to do that,
Yeah. Ian, what do you think? Is it important that people know we're Christians, or is that something different?
I think it's a case of actions speak louder than words, really. So I think that you don't have to tell people, or you shouldn't have to tell people. If you do have to tell people, then it sounds as though your actions aren't aligning with what you're saying. So I think that you just behave as you believe Jesus would want you to behave, and then it's up to people whether they pick up on that or not. But clearly also there's an issue that if you're talking about your life, then yeah, I'll quite happily talk to folks, my neighbours, and else. The fact that I go to church, the fact that we spend a fair amount of time with the guys who are seeking asylum in the UK. And it's just things like that, I think, just build a picture of someone and hopefully it's the right picture.
Yeah. So it's not hiding it. It's not being ashamed of it. It's talking about your life and maybe referring to your faith in certain ways, but you're not necessarily wearing a massive cross around your neck and a fish on the back of your car and every single carrying a Bible around and maybe reading it in the office or something like that.
Well, having said that,
all right, yeah,
we have just bought a 1 meter high illuminated silhouette of the Nativity that will go on our front wall at Christmas time. So people will know what Christmas is about. So I think there are indications, there are times when you can make a point.
One of our neighbours is like that. They've got a wooden, it looks like a Christmas tree, but it's wooden signs that says Jesus is the reason for the season. Right. And they put it in their front garden at Christmas. So it's pretty obvious. And they got stickers all over their cars that show they're Christians and stuff like that. So it's, some people want to do that, some people don't.
No, that's right.
And actually, some people do that and are a worse witness than someone who doesn't, unfortunately. Do we have the patience, do you think, and the trust in God to... I was talking this morning about, I was doing the part on being a messenger of the gospel. And I talked about the temptation to try and push and to literally preach the gospel because we want something measurable, we want something tangible, we want something to say, yes, we've definitely done this. And I just wonder, do we have the patience and the trust in God to focus on our fruit, which is maybe our good works and how we act and what we say and our behavior and those 6 M's that we highlighted, rather than measurable targets and numbers? How do we get a good balance between pushing people to invite someone to church or to share the gospel with them? You have little bracelets, don't you, with the 4 points on, or frog, pray until... what is it? What does frog stand for? There's push, pray until something happens, and there's frog as well, which someone who's watching might remember. But there's things that can push us a little bit further. How do we get a balance? Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know is the answer. I think that I always think, and I don't think I'm far short of the point, that the fault lies with me, not with God. So if we're, I suppose, if in our lives we don't see that fruit, don't see what we would hope for a good response to Jesus, I tend, rather than to think, well, God is working and he's working through me and he's working in that person's life, I'm thinking, well, I've got it all wrong and I need to do something different. So, and I think it's a real balance between that issue of persistence and patience and trusting in God and allowing him to point out if you can do things differently.
Because you talked about, you mentioned a little while ago about intentionality. And actually, sermons have to be intentional. So there's an importance in recognizing that we are called to be fruitful on our front lines, that we do need to be intentional, that maybe we need to start the day saying to God, can you use me? Can you point out ways in which I can help people to serve you? And that's really important. But we need to resist, I guess, that urge to start pushing and start
a bit heavy-handed, don't you?
Yeah, so that's a good phrase.
Back off,
Heavy-handed is a really good phrase, I think, because we can start to ruin our witness when we start getting heavy-handed, and that's often the complaint that's made of people, of Christians, that we can be a bit heavy-handed. Bible bashing is is something that's sometimes referred to. David, what do you think? How do we get a balance that's healthy and correct?
I think the word authentic has to come in. And you'll probably not like me for saying this, but the Iranians have very often talked about Mr. Ian, and it's not like he taught me this Bible verse. There's something about you they relate to, and it's not just that you gave them yet another study on the Old Testament. And I think that authenticity is just so important, that people matter enough to us that we want them to find Christ. But that we also trust. I think it was you that said it, this, Martin, I might be misquoting you, that it is God who will do the work.
Yes.
Because if not, we will find a way to, he's not quick enough, so we'll try and make it happen. It's there was a bit that came to me, I don't know how you'd think about it, but Jesus on the cross next to two people who were about to die. And we aren't told that Jesus looked at them and said, do you realize you've only got a few minutes? You need to repent now. We're not told that. We do know that one of them was saved and the other wasn't. But Jesus would have known more than anything these people had not long to live. And yet we don't see him coming in and saying, you must, you must. But there was something about Christ that made the thief say, please remember me when you're in heaven. Later on, we hear about the apostles adding 3,000 to their midst, but I'm not sure there are very many places where they were talking about church numbers.
Yeah.
It was letting people know Christ. Yeah,
because we get so caught up in, right, we've got to get them to church, we've got to be able to record the numbers, we've got to record number of baptisms and salvations, and we like to measure these things, none of which is wrong, and it's actually really important we do this. So it's a good way of keeping track of maybe how successful, if that's the right word, we are as a church. But if we get tied up in that rather than the need for authenticity, for relationship, for love and grace, and I mean, if I just go through those 6 M's again, because I think they're so important, to focus on those rather than conversions or even spiritual conversations. It's about modeling godly character, so really trying our best to be Jesus in our situation, to act like he did, to talk like he did. Number 2 was making good work. Actually, God is interested in what we do, and how we do it. Ministering grace and love, that's a really important one. I think when we start getting pushy and when we start trying to get conversions, we tend to lose that grace and love bit. Molding culture, how can we actually shape the culture of our workplace or our home just through the way we act and the way we behave, the way we treat people. Being a mouthpiece for truth and justice, standing up, I guess, for maybe those that struggle to stand up for themselves, I think is really important. Will environment come into that? I don't know, but possibly. And then lastly, being a messenger of the gospel, and that really just, I think, encompasses everything. Gospel means good news, and I guess the question we need to ask ourselves: are we good news in our front lines? Would people look at us and go, actually, you're really good news. You make things better rather than worse. I hope none of us make things worse wherever we go. You don't want to be that sort of person, do you?
No,
not
really.
No. We're coming towards the end now. Ian, which one did you say you were mouthpiece for truth and justice? Was there anything particular from that jumped out at you that could maybe you think really stuck with you or sums up your message?
Well, there was something that jumped out to me, but it wasn't actually being a mouthpiece for truth or justice, really. It was in that passage where Nathan is sharing that parable with King David about Bathsheba. And when he says to David, you are that man, he then goes on within that to say that by sinning, you despise God. And that really came across quite strongly to me, that sinning is despising God. It means he's of no value to you. You know best. And that really struck me quite hard.
Yeah.
To actually despise God, it is an awful thing.
Why do you think Nathan said that? What is he meaning there? What's the connection between sin and despising God? Doing wrong stuff, I guess, and despising God.
Yeah, I think it's that, we know that God only wants the best for us. He loves us. So if we're then saying, well, no, my way is better than your way, God, then I think that we are despising him. We are showing complete disregard for him. So, yeah.
And David, which one were you?
Making good work.
Making good work. So was there anything that stands out or stood out for you from your preparation and delivering of that message?
I really enjoyed, as I preparing it. I'm not sure I'd have put my hand up for it, but having volunteered me, I really. There were a couple of things. I don't know if you experience it. So let's assume, Martin, you've done something and it's gone really well, and people then come and start thanking you for it. You were the one telling us the other day about, oh, you shouldn't have done that, and so on. Your natural reflex is an awkwardness about how to handle the glory that's heaped on you. And sometimes you take it on without knowing it. You start looking for it. But you don't quite realize you're that person until you allow someone to go in traffic and they don't say thanks. And you think, goodness, they didn't even say thanks. No, you didn't say it for the thanks, but you know you're... So the bit I looked at was about giving the glory to God. He can handle it better than you can. Just leave it with him. Because if not, it's awkward. And then just the second bit I took away from it was, we are very often busy being busy, and just don't get so caught up in working for God that you end up having no time for God.
Yeah.
There was that part. So do your work, do it well, but the moment it starts being your God, you're finished. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you, Dave. That was one of the issues, wasn't it? That God picked up. We as humans worship. We are made to worship. That's what we do. We do it incredibly well. Unfortunately, it's not always God that we worship. If it's not God, we'll find something else. And for many of us, it is our work, it is our family. Our front line becomes that we are worshipping rather than God himself. And that's the balance that we really need to something we need to sort out, isn't it? That we're called to be godly and to work on our front lines for God and to be a good witness. But sometimes our front lines can be the most important thing, and we lose sight of what truly is important. Yeah. We're coming towards the end of our time now. Just a big thank you to you guys for being here this evening and sharing your wisdom and your time, but also for being part of this sermon series. Ian, this was the first time you'd preached HBC for how many years?
Well, that's 9 or 10 years, I should say.
9 or 10 years. So are you going to be on the next rota?
Well, I've said I will. So
hey, there we go.
That's good. Depends whether I measured up, Martin, you know.
That's good. That's not a problem there. That's fine. All good. So we look forward to whatever topic you happen to get next time. And just to you guys that have been watching either live or on catch up, thank you so much for joining us. If you do happen to have any questions, you can email us at gotquestions@hollybaptist.org.uk, and we will do our best to answer them. And if you like any prayer, you can contact us once again by email at prayer@hollybaptist.org.uk, and that's a confidential email address where we'd love to pray for you as well. Or you can contact us through our Facebook page or our webpage as well. So there's numerous ways there. But no, thank you guys. Thank you those watching, and God bless, and thank you for joining us. Bye.